Oh, we are coming to this world crying, but it doesn't mean that we're weak, it just means we're alive. Yeah, we're alive. Oh, somewhere, somehow we all learn to hide it. Don't show the fire in your soul, just keep it inside. Yeah, keep it inside.
Hello. Welcome to this month's episode or session conversation, our Fireside Chat for November. Coming to you from the SONA Foundation. Usually I am in California, but this week I'm coming to you from Massachusetts. And as always, we are here with our Backline partners to talk with songwriters about mental health. We're really excited this month of November. It's been maybe somewhat of a stressful time, and also the holidays are coming up. And so this feels like a really great topic for this time of year. Actually, this is the same topic that we did at a year ago in November. I believe it was November. And so if you're interested after this episode, after you watch our conversation today, if you want a little more, we have our conversation with Kay Hanley and Bonnie McKee from last year, talking also about addiction and sobriety. This week, or this month, I should say, we are welcoming Peter Paul Loughran and Kathy Moser, both here songwriter guests, and very excited to talk with them. And of course, we have our conversation facilitator, Terra Lopez, who I'll bring onto the screen in just a moment. I just want to thank you for watching, paying attention, being in conversation, being part of the SONA Foundation. And if you have missed past sessions of these conversations, these fireside chats on mental health with songwriters, I invite you to browse our website and our YouTube channel, where all of the sessions are recorded. And we have some new material also up on our financial wellness program. We recently had our 4th installment of the Music and Money series presented by the SONA Foundation in partnership with City National Bank. And in addition, we recently put up a recording of a panel conversation that I had with Kay Hanley and Tracy Dickerson, both songwriters, and Tracy is also a marriage and family therapist. And we were talking again about mental health, such an important topic for our songwriting community, for our wider music industry, and of course, for the whole world. So without further delay, I'm going to bring Terra Lopez up and introduce you to her, bring her onto the screen. Hi, Terra.
Hey, how's it going, Ariel?
Very good. I'm not going to linger here because my Wi-Fi is a little shaky today, and also I'm not the point of this program. I'm so excited to once again have you here facilitating the conversation. You always do such a great job. So I'm just going to bow out and thank you so much for being here.
Oh gosh, thank you so much. And welcome everyone. I'm Terra Lopez. I'm the community manager and head of artist partnerships at Backline. As every month, we have a very special fireside chat with the SONA Foundation. As most of you probably know, Backline is a resource hub for the music industry. We aim to provide as many tools and resources as possible to support mental health and wellness. And we've teamed up with the SONA Foundation for these very special fireside chats to talk about mental health for songwriters. And today, as Ariel mentioned, we are talking about addiction and sobriety, recovery, and we have some very special guests. Kathy Moser is an award-winning songwriter and performer in long-term recovery and is the founder of Music for Recovery. She has given recovery songwriting workshops and performances at dozens of treatment centers. She's also the program director at Daytop, a drug addiction treatment organization. We also have Peter Paul Loughran, an Irish singer-songwriter. Peter has been traveling and writing all over Europe and Africa for the last 2.5 years. And Peter identifies as a grateful alcoholic in recovery. And lastly, we have Backline Clinical Director Ari Jacobson. Ari has been instrumental in helping grow Backline's clinical network of vetted mental health professionals. As always, Ariel will be moderating the chat box, so please feel free to drop in any questions that you might have, and we will try our best to get to them. So let's welcome our guests. And hey, Kathy, how's it going? Hey, Ari. Hey, Peter. Thank you all so much. I know, I think Peter's traveling, so I know that there might be a little lag. So that's all good. We understand the songwriter life. So when you can chime in, Peter, feel free to. But Kathy, thank you so much. Kathy and Ari, thank you so much also for being here, and just really excited to talk about this. Especially, I think, it's such a timely subject with the holidays coming up and families, and all the stress that can potentially bring. So just really grateful to have you. I like to start these conversations off with just the general asking of how are you doing today?
I'll start. I'm doing pretty great, actually. I'm very excited to be with you. It's beautiful here in New Jersey right now. Yeah, I'm doing well. Thank you.
Awesome. Ari, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm excited to be here. Similarly, I'm outside Baltimore, and it's surprisingly nice out today, despite being a little bit definitely shying on the. We're starting to see some winter coming around. But yeah, otherwise doing rather well. How about you, Tara? How are you doing?
Oh, thanks. I'm doing great. I'm coming in from California, and likewise, it is really beautiful today. But I know that winter is going to come around right around the corner. So, well. I just first off just want to thank you both for being here. Peter's going to come in when he can. So we'll just start the conversation off. And Ari, I thought it would be great to start with you and just have you address how addiction is defined and what distinguishes it from habitual behavior or dependency.
Sure. So as I always start off with these, I always make a mention that this should not be used for any kind of diagnosing. If you think that any of this hits home or resonates, reach out to a professional, even just a primary care doctor. It's a good place to start just to find out if something is even wrong or if there's an issue, but let this be informative rather than diagnostic for anybody. But just to kind of start off, addiction is it's a really interesting disorder because it is seen as a disease. I've seen it viewed very much as like an allergy, where similarly, like where some people can't really tolerate milk or lactose, but yet they can still try and they have some residual effects. Something like alcohol use or other addiction can be seen similarly, where people just have a true allergy to it, where when they use it, it just doesn't produce good effects. The difference between a habit and an addiction is really kind of crossing over that threshold of losing control. Habits are going to be, even bad habits, you might have some feeling of control where it hasn't completely gotten out of control, but you're starting to realize that maybe it's becoming a problem. But a full-blown addiction is going to be where things have really started to negatively impact you, and they're going to start to show some really negative effects. I always like to just point out kind of when you go talk to somebody what they're looking for, just to even see if your use might be an issue. And just a very quick rundown for what some of that diagnostic criteria even looks like to know if it's an issue is, are you using your substance more than you intended? So maybe you said, I'm going to do it just for this morning or this afternoon, and then it trickles into the afternoon and the evening. Have you ever tried cutting down, but you've been unable to? Have you ever experienced any major cravings or urges? Have you ever gone through any kind of withdrawal? And for those of you who have ever said like, no, I've never been through withdrawal. I've also only drank alcohol. Remember that a pretty nasty hangover is a similar feeling to what withdrawal really is. Your body actually is withdrawing from the alcohol. It might just not be that full clinical term of withdrawal. Also, are you spending a lot of time planning around getting whatever it is that you're trying to use and then using? Are you forgetting things at home? Are you still using even when you're having problems? So maybe you've gotten arrested, maybe you've gotten a DUI, but yet you're still continuing to use. Are you avoiding things that you might actually really enjoy because there might not be alcohol or drugs, or you have to be sober? Are you doing anything that's putting you in danger? So drinking and driving, or even just going out in public? And then again, are you continuing to use, even despite knowing that you've had some of these negative effects? So you know that you're hitting a pretty bad bout of depression after you're using, but yet you still end up using afterwards. So just with all those combined, it takes a lot to really get into a full addiction, but at the same time, it can also take just a really little bit to get you into an addiction as well.
Thank you so much, Ari, for breaking that down. Kathy and Peter, welcome, Peter. When did you first realize you were struggling with addiction? When was that realization for you?
Well, I tell you what, I remember, I don't talk about this a lot, but I remember, and thank you guys for doing this, by the way. It's like so close to my heart, what you're talking about today. I remember a night when I had a whole pile of cocaine that was not mine, and I knew I shouldn't do it, and I didn't want to do it, and I couldn't stop doing it. And I really had the sense that it was going to kill me. I mean, if I kept going like that. And I tell you what, it was, and I was actually doing it on the back of a toilet, right? Cutting out the lines on the back of a toilet. And it was like years into sobriety that I was like, I could have just flushed that, right? But like this never occurred to me. So yeah, it wasn't mine. I also just became aware that if I got high one day, I was so likely to get high the next day. I would also get sick. I'd get physically sick because it would crash my immune system. It took a long time. I did drugs for 20 years. So it was pretty late in the game that I saw it as being problematic. When I look back, I can see that it was problematic kind of all along, but it was a coping skill, honestly, until it wasn't.
20 years. And I think Peter, we'll see if Peter can come back, but 20 years, you mentioned that it was a coping skill for you. Did you realize it at the time that that's what it was, or did it take the recovery process to understand that that's why you were using?
Well, I'll tell you what, I come from a alcoholic family. I'm the only one in sobriety. And there was a lot of violence in the home that was unpredictable. So the first night I remember, well, first of all, I asked my mom about drugs and she said I should go talk to my brother, and he promptly took me out and got me high. And so I really think I was being initiated into the family system, and the family remains a little bit uncomfortable with me being sober, even though I've been sober and clean and sober continuously for 28 years now. But the first night I got high, there was a violent fight in my house. I went down the street to a party. I was super upset. Someone took me out and walked me around the block and got me high. I came back into the house, and there was just like this much distance between me and what was happening in my house and my life. And like, that's the whole story of my using. So yeah, I do think I knew I didn't use for fun. Sometimes I accidentally had fun, but I didn't do it for fun. I definitely did it to cope. And now I just tell you, like, in long-term sobriety and with all of the information we have about trauma now, it's taken me a long time and in my own recovery to understand like the real long-term lasting impacts of trauma. And I would just like the one thing I would like to say about, well, two things I like to say about trauma. It's real and it's weird and it's treatable. There's really so many treatments that are available right now, but trauma is super weird and it will just wait for you. And so even in long-term recovery, there's just one thing I love about recovery. It's just like music, right? It never stops unfolding. There never stops being interesting new stuff to figure out and to learn and new ways to grow.
Ari, that's so interesting that Kathy, you mentioned trauma. How do mental health issues such as PTSD, possibly from trauma, anxiety, depression, interact with addiction? And does that complicate the recovery process?
Yeah, it's really common for people who are experiencing some really severe addictions, or it's not uncommon for somebody to have what's considered a dual diagnosis. So a diagnosis of some sort of mental health disorder and then co-occurring substance abuse disorder at the same time. Many cases, just like Kathy said, substances aren't something that people tend to very few people are going to, you find very few people just kind of say one day, like, hey, I just want to try some extreme drug. I want to try heroin. I want to try crack cocaine. I want to try meth. Rather, what happens is a series of negative experiences, some traumatic events. And then truthfully, kind of similar to what Kathy was saying, it's a common story where people will reach out to somebody they know, say, I'm really struggling with something. And then they're introduced to something by saying like, hey, this can help mask whatever you're feeling. And at a young age or at a vulnerable state where people are in, any effort to not have to deal with whatever is hurting right now, rather instead to be able to mask it, kind of push it to the side and cope with whatever in theory, enjoy what my time right now rather than not enjoy what I'm trying to come across or trying to experience, that's usually when you definitely see a lot of substance use being used to mask symptoms of really negative mental health disorders. It's very, very common.
Mm.
I also like to just say, if I could jump in and say, like, the thing about songwriters is, one thing that makes us songwriters is we're really sensitive, and we're really open, and we're really porous, I would say, in a way, and so that's why I'm so excited that we're having this conversation about talking about how do we care for ourselves and we can maintain our creative openness while also protecting our soul and our mental health. Because
That's
some
so
things that might not bother another person might bother an artist, right?
Yeah. Peter, I don't know. Hopefully we can hear you. I know we can't see you, but hopefully we can hear you. When did you realize you were struggling with addiction?
I get apologies that you can't see me. Everything says you can see me, and I can see me. So I'm.
Oh, I think we may have lost the audio.
Okay.
Oh, there you go.
Okay. All right. Sorry. As I say, I thought everything was okay at my side. I'm so sorry, guys.
No worries. It happens.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. We'll get into it. As I say, it's I think, just as Kathy said, and by the way, Kathy, I'm really excited to look into music for recovery. It looks really awesome. And I'm definitely going to look at that. It would seem I'm the last of 10 kids, and
I think we may have lost the audio. Oh, now I hear it.
Okay. Oh, guys, I'm sorry, because I don't want to mess up your entire situation by having such bad audio and stuff. Anyways, it took a long time. It took a lot of consequences to really see that alcohol and using was a negative thing in my life. And I think especially in music, you're almost celebrated for as crazy as you can be. Or to this day, I use the term like, oh, that's rock and roll.
I'm not sure if it's cutting out for others as well. It is. Yeah. Okay. Peter, we'll see if we can get back a connection with you, because I really want to hear your perspective as well. Peter did bring up something, though, that's really interesting, is that the industry does kind of celebrate, how in his words, how crazy or erratic, or kind of feeds off of that. Kathy, do you think in your experience, did the industry enable that behavior, or even at times support it, encourage it?
Yeah, well, I think there's a myth in the entire culture about creativity and drugs and alcohol, whether it's Hemingway or Van Gogh, or not Van Gogh. I mean, Van Gogh had a mental illness, but was not using substances. But it's like this myth in the culture, and I'm passionate about like breaking down that myth, because it's not true. Creativity does not reside in the substances; it resides in the person. It's just not true. And also the consequences are so bad, especially right now. Just so many artists that are beloved who are talking about mental health, like Little Peep and Juice WRLD and Meek Mill, and all these people lost, but also being role models, and Kurt Cobain, right? And there's people that you just wish, oh my gosh, wouldn't it have been amazing if Kurt Cobain had gotten help and talked about it? Wouldn't it have been amazing if Prince got help and talked about it? It would have been amazing if Whitney Houston got help and talked about it. And I could go on. But I will tell you, it's true for me that the people that turn me on to music turn me on to drugs. Absolutely. And all the people that I admired that were around me playing music were also doing drugs. And also all the people that I saw in that lifestyle was celebrated. So I think if you have a stage of any kind, you have a responsibility, because I mean, it's tragic that Kurt Cobain died, but how many thousands of teenagers put a needle in their arm because they admired Kurt Cobain and because our industry made that look sexy? Like there was a whole heroin cool modeling thing for a minute, right in the back there for a while. So yeah, it's not true. It's not sustainable. I will not lie. I will tell you that I definitely wrote some great songs when I was high. I just can't find them, you know? They're on tapes labeled something like Thursday Night at Joe's House, which is a cassette tape I have. I've never been able to throw it out, but I've never been able to listen to it either. I remember it was a good night. But again, the creativity is not in the substances. It's in the person.
Really important distinction. Hi, Peter. I know it's probably a bit aggravating to not have the audio, but I'm wondering, can you hear us? I'm not sure if he can.
I can hear, everything's fine now. If you can see me and I can see you, I can hear you.
Yes, we can hear you and see you.
I can see you and hear you. Okay, and I can hear you. Okay, good. Again, guys, I'm so sorry. It's North Africa for you. I just heard the end of that, Kathy. That was awesome. I want to hear the songs from Thursday Night at George's house or whatever that was. It's funny. I developed an odd way a long time ago of using video to record my ideas because I already knew that I was never going to exactly know what happened. Even if I wrote something down, you can look at something, trying to remember the melody. Even if you've written chords down, it's almost impossible, certainly for me. So I just started videoing myself. So if I come up with an idea, I would video myself. Consequently, I've now got hundreds and hundreds of small videos that I also have to look and embarrassingly look back sometimes and just see this drunken or high fool. Now, some of the stuff definitely seems like it had potential, but definitely there's even some shame in looking back at some of those, even though I'm just sitting by myself. I hope that picked up the thread of what was happening there while I was trying to find connection. Apologies again.
No, that was great. I'd like to ask you, Kathy and Peter, how did addiction affect your relationships with either family members, friends, or bandmates?
Peter, why don't you go first while we have you?
Not sure if you can hear us, Peter.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll jump in until, I guess, should I?
Yeah.
How did it affect my relationships? I think it made me feel like an outsider.
Okay, that's a great idea right there, Kathy, just in case. Well, you know, like many people in recovery, I don't speak for all of us, of course, but yeah, I can hear you. There seems to be just a delay, oddly. So
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure. Let's see.
All right, I'll jump in if I should.
Yeah, let's do that.
It made me feel like an outsider. It made me feel separated from, you know, there's times when for sure playing, it felt like there was a psychic connection or whatever. But
you know the answer, obviously.
Oh gosh. Okay. I think it also, in some ways, honestly, in some ways it was like a relief valve, right? But it definitely kept me from like, instead of like having an issue with somebody and then going and talking about it and working it out, I would just go get high. So, resentments would build, and I would just cut people out. I didn't, and I used drugs from 14 to 34. So those are particularly years in which it would have been great to be learning some things, right? About how to be a person, how to have relationships, how to interact with people. And it was very embarrassing at 34 to realize like, I just didn't have that stuff, but thankfully in recovery, I was able to learn those things. But I think it really, there's no way it made my relationships better. And also, obviously, like most people in addiction, I hung out with people that I would never have hung out with. Like, and you are who you hang out with, And in my case, like I hung out with a bunch of people that were sitting in suburban basements, not doing much, as opposed to out there trying things and exploring things and, passionate about school and traveling. Like one way I've made amends to myself in my recovery is traveling. So yeah, it just helped. It stopped me from learning any coping skills because it was the coping skill. It wasn't a coping skill. It was the coping skill.
14 to 34, those are such formative years, especially in your 20s. And just I feel for all of that time that, that was spent. What was the hardest part of living with addiction?
That I knew I had all this potential and I wasn't meeting it. That just haunted me. And I just like to say to any young people, it's like, if you can get clean now, man, do it. My life would be radically different. My life would have been radically different if I had not started, and I would love it if the musicians that turned me on to music had said to me, hey kid, what, that's a really cool guitar and don't ever get high, as opposed to that's a cool guitar, here's a joint, So yeah, if you're a young musician, man, it also just makes you so much more sustainable because I show up at the show on time with all my equipment every time, prepared and ready to work. And I get asked back everywhere I work because of that, and I don't suck. So, but I think the hardest thing of getting clean was just the emotional, learning how to regulate my emotions. And that's one of the reasons we need community in recovery, because it's incredibly, feeling our feelings can feel like going crazy when it starts to come in, and early recovery can be incredibly rough. And it's a team sport, it's not something to do by yourself.
Ari, Kathy had mentioned, that those who introduced her to music also introduced her to drugs and that lifestyle. What role does stress or environmental factors, such as the music industry, play in the development of addiction?
So I know that a lot of the musicians that I have met and worked with over the years, not all of them are so comfortable being on something like a very large stage. They may really relate to the music and really be passionate about the music and love it, but something like standing in front of however many hundreds or thousands of people is just terrifying. Drugs and alcohol, as Kathy said, it's not just that they're you can say this so much facetiously, but they're a really good coping skill. They really can attack the feelings that you're having and change them over so that the scared feelings become relaxed, or the unmotivated suddenly appears to feel motivated. And there's a lot of false benefit that they can really provide. So when something like extreme stress comes around, and we're trying to say I'm so nervous about this stress, but I don't want to necessarily tackle it head on, or even more so, I don't feel capable or qualified to tackle this head on. How can I do it? I bet you I can do it if I'm more relaxed, or if I'm in a different state of mind, or I take a hit of something. So it's usually, especially once our brain has used some sort of substance as the coping skill, then the next time we're presented with that fight or flight opportunity, your brain kind of goes, hey, don't forget what you used last time. You took a hit of something and it made you feel really, really relaxed, and that was really good. And the goal is to find a coping skill that's easy to use, quick to use, doesn't take a lot of energy to figure out. So that's where the addiction starts, because our brain starts to go quickly to whatever worked well. And fortunately, unfortunately, a lot of these substances tend to work really well. The back end consequences aren't good at all.
Peter, welcome back. Let's see. Hopefully this can work, but all good. We totally get it. But I had just asked Kathy prior, what was the hardest part, the most difficult part of living with addiction?
The hardest part of living with addiction, well, I mean, as everyone in the room probably knows, you're always living with addiction, right? You know, it's and I think the goalposts change a lot too. You know, certain things on one day will be, easier to manage, than another. These are the tools that obviously that we can all get through, step programs, and working any sort of good program, is great. And, I from a personal point of view, I find that it's really good to have, other people in the program to speak to that understand the same situation. In my case, I do like a daily group with men, most of them musicians, and a lot of really, really cool people from some of the biggest bands in the world, and incredibly inspiring that these people could literally be doing anything with their time. Often they're on tour, and they'll always make that daily meeting, and we'll all sit there online in different parts of the world, and incredible inspiration. But I guess more importantly, when it really gets down to brass tacks, everyone's exactly the same. Everyone's suffering, from this, I guess the consequences of addiction and alcoholism, and everyone's there to try the best to support each other as best they can. And again, there's nothing like, speaking to another addict or another alcoholic, for them to feel you're completely understood, and as well as, the reason we're talking here is other people that also write music and so on. It's really interesting to have conversations with them about how that reflects in your music. Even in early music, even before I was an addict, I look back at all my early songs I wrote. They were really all about addiction, every one of them. It's always asking for help, or struggling, or failing, or falling, whatever that may be. And it's odd that was, that was manifesting in a way that I was unable to vocalize at that time. Yeah, just totally ran away from your question there, though, Terra. Sorry about that.
No, that was great. I mean, Peter talked about community, which is just what Kathy was talking about, how we all need community, especially dealing with addiction and sobriety. Community is truly necessary. I'd like to ask you both, Kathy and Peter, what was the defining moment when you realized that you needed help, you wanted help, and what was that turning point for you like?
Shall I go again, just in case, Kathy? Awesome stuff. There was awesome. Thank you. There was a few times, but the one time I have come in and out of. I haven't come in and out of addiction. I've come in and out of recovery, and that's been something that has just part of my story now. And I'm totally fine with that. I certainly don't feel a failure. It's like in the program you'll hear people say, don't shoot you're wounded, so it's always good, coming back is always good regardless. But the very first time around, and I'll not get into too much details, but I basically was at like an Emmy party in LA, and I really acted out. And I really thought I was, I'm at an Emmy party with lots of, people that I guess are valid of being there. I was not, but I acted like I should have been the main event there. And embarrassingly, the next day, my wife basically just asked me to leave the house, and that was the start of the build up to a divorce. And can you still hear me?
Yes, yeah.
You still hear me? Okay, good, sorry. But that was the build up to a divorce. And the bottom line was, I dabbled, or I'd been around Alcoholic Anonymous and some other programs before, and I knew some people, but I made a phone call to someone, and that person called me back, and that person became my sponsor that day, and that started my first really solid deep dive into into recovery ultimately. And again, I took that bottom, and oddly, I'll wrap this up quickly, but oddly, I was told around that time, that I'd be happy. I guess what I'm trying to say is, I thought that was my bottom. That was pretty bad, and it did lead to divorce, and it was a pretty bad bottom. But I was willing to go back out there again and even spend deeper bottom possible. But that was my first situation.
Thank you so much, Peter. Kathy, what was the defining moment for you?
Well, I think there's two. One is that, I just want to say I had this thought about it, just for musical analogy, that recovery is not a solo instrument, right? Recovery is a band instrument. And but I played a big rock drum set by myself for years. I would go to this rehearsal studio, this scungy rehearsal studio, and get high and play drums for hours. And there was never a bass player, and there was never a guitar player. I was just there by myself getting high. And I remember this one day where I just, the fear, I just became aware of how scared I was, at a baseline level. And I could not get the drugs to make the fear lie down. Just some line was crossed there. And that's when I realized, oh my God, I'm terrified all the time. And then the other thing is that I got this opportunity to run this recording studio program for this Boys and Girls Club near me. And I got this opportunity, and I was not willing to lose it. And I was sure they would drug test me, which they didn't actually, as it turns out. But that was just this perfect kind of storm of things happened that I was just if I lose this opportunity because they drug test me and I fail, I won't be able to live with myself. And so yeah, those two things.
Two kind of bottoms of hitting that bottom for both of you. Looking now into recovery, how do you both stay motivated in the recovery process? Kathy, you mentioned you've been 28 years clean. How do you stay motivated throughout these years, and does music play a role into that motivation?
Peter, you want to go first, my friend? Me?
Why don't you go
Okay.
just to mix it up? Make us lucky.
Well, so I work. So now my company, Music for Recovery, we do music programming and treatment centers all over the state here, and we've done it in 17 states in the U.S. I get to see what happens if you don't get recovery, firsthand, right? One of the places I work in, the detox, and it's incredibly motivating. I'm also the only person in my family. My dad died of addiction. I was present for it. I was the only other person there besides him. But also, man, it's why do I pick up my guitar? Because it continues to be interesting. It continues to be deep. And the friendships I have, man, these people saved my life. My boyfriend, and I live in the New York metropolitan area. And in 2001, September 11th happened, and my boyfriend had 5 friends in those towers, and that didn't come home that day. And he relapsed and overdosed in one move, and then ended up dying. And people saved my life in that time with their kindness. And I have these amazing relationships with people, and it's not work for me. It's joy, and also I get to be useful. You know what? I'm not the old person at the party trying to hang with the young people and be cool and get high with them. I'm so grateful for that. My apprentice is 23. She's clean us over 8 years. I've known her since she's 15. She just got her music therapy degree, and she's crushing it, right? And I get to have this joy of being old and having something to give, as opposed to being old and trying to hang with the young people. So super grateful for that.
gosh, the depths of your friendships and recovery and your relationships and community. That's beautiful. Peter, what about you?
That's yep, daily recovery. That's so cool, Kathy. Again, I totally relate. I mean, when I was younger and at parties, I would literally look at someone that was like 30 something in the party and think, "Oh, what an old." I was going to use profanity there, but I'm unsure if you're allowed profanity in here, so I'll hold back. It's normally part of my general vocabulary. But yeah, and I just think, oh my God, what's that person doing here? Like, I would never be that person. Now, of course, I was definitely that person. And in fact, I think it even rolls over into even meetings. I because of travel, I do a lot of Zoom meetings, and I'll still be the one once the room closed. I'm still hanging out. I always think there's something more going to happen, and more the case. And on a daily recovery, again, for me personally, again, because I'm traveling, and that I went traveling to write some songs for a particular person. It was a real good opportunity, and that was 2.5 years ago. And I was slipping when I was traveling. Thankfully, not crazily, because I wasn't in a position to find horrendous things that could really hurt me. And but I would drink or think again this thing where you think, oh, I could, even after all the time, even after everything, you think, oh, I'm sitting in the south of France. Surely I can have some wine with my meal or something, And thankfully, I was always very quick to just get right back and realize, and that's at least good. That reflex is good. I mean, it's not one you want to be exercising, but that happens to be just my truth. That's what was happening. And with regard to music, again, I think it's a double-edged sword for me personally. I think it's very hard to separate, this rock and roll vibe, even though it's not even the music I write. Ultimately, I love melancholy, like acoustic country music, you know what I mean? So I don't even know why I think I'm Billy Idol here, but the truth is, it's definitely a double-edged sword. And again, it's really beautiful. I'm very lucky, as I say, to have a community of people. I'm sure he wouldn't mind me mentioning his name, but Ben Montench is a real inspiration to me. Ben Montench, the keyboard player for Tom Petty and Heartbreakers, and he wrote all them parts, and he's one of the most beautiful, coolest men in my life. And he just came back from tour and stuff like that, and he's just he makes me see that the rock and roll is not that cool. Really good music and well-written stuff, and stuff that can really try and connect with someone, and that's what's really cool today. It might not be rock and roll, but it's really cool.
I love that. Ari, what are some common misconceptions about addiction and also recovery that you wish people understood?
I think, to start off, I think that there's this belief that it's like a one and done type thing. So once people get into recovery, that they're in recovery, and then there's no bumps and hiccups or anything of that nature. So people tend to, I find that even in my time of working in addictions, that people who relapse tended to be rather hard on themselves, rather than to take a perspective of it of like, I made a mistake, or I had a lapse in judgment rather than I relapsed on my addiction. I made a decision that was not the best from that time, and now I need to start all over. It's not necessarily that you need to start all over. It's that you kind of need to retweak and recalibrate what you're doing, just to be able to make sure that you're on the same path. At the end of the day, especially in like 12-step programs, it's encouraged to, count sobriety and maintain, so you have an idea of how long you've been doing it. But that's great because it helps some people really work towards their next goal, but it also prevents somebody from making a mistake and getting right back on the train. The other misconception is that this is easy. I think especially in the music industry, I don't go to when I go to work, I can't tell somebody like, hey, make sure there's a case of Bud Light at my desk when I get there. But you go to different green rooms, you put it on a rider, and even when you don't want it, suddenly it just shows up. Also, green rooms are things that happen backstage aren't always monitored. So what people are doing back there is really up to them. And again, it's around there all the time. And especially alcohol is just so widely discussed and open that it's something where if you're trying to get away from a bad habit, usually you try to separate from it. And in this type of industry, when you're standing on stage, there's a strong chance that the majority of the people out there are, if they're not already intoxicated, they probably have at least a drink in their hand. So you're kind of around it a lot as it is. So it just adds an extra piece of difficulty to try and maintain some sobriety for sure.
It's so true. I when I perform on stage, I actively ask venues like to have no alcohol backstage just because I don't drink it. And it somehow always ends up in my green room.
That, and I talk to a lot of people who it's like, oh yeah, I requested nothing in backstage. Maybe I didn't mention that I'm sober, but I just said like, I don't need it. And then the venue, as a thank you, got them like a really nice bottle of liquor. So they're like, oh, I'm not drinking Bud Light, but I'm walking away with this $150 bottle of tequila that I really didn't want. And now I'm trying to figure out what to do with it. But now the demon and the angel are sitting on my shoulder going, you can probably crack it open. Or like, maybe you should hold it for a celebration. And all of that combined is one thing after another. That's where sometimes you can control things, but you can't always control what people just literally hand over to you.
Kathy and Peter, I want to ask before we wrap up, what do you do to prioritize your mental health on a daily basis during your, in your recovery journey?
Peter, is it your turn to go first this time? Me? Okay. Well, I definitely take the hungry, angry, lonely, tired thing super seriously.
Okay.
I just want to say that any like working musicians, performing is like, it's exhausting at a cellular level that I don't think other things are. I remember the first time I went on tour sober and I was so exhausted. I was by myself. And I remember calling this friend of mine who was also in recovery and going, I don't know if I can get to the airport. I don't know if I can get to the airport. I'm so tired. I was in Denver. So I was in Colorado. So I'd been up in like 11,000 feet or 8,000 feet, whatever, in the elevation. And so hungry, angry, lonely, tired, super important. Also having people to talk to in case there's two things that can happen for me that are weird because I play alone a lot. Is one, having a really great show and having no one to talk to about it. And the other's having a really bad show and having no one to talk to about it. So I have friends on all the coasts. So I try to always have someone available in a time zone that if I get done at 11 or whatever, there's someone I could talk to. I also just say it's my, I just want to say that like we give a performance and like what Peter was saying about rock and roll, one thing that's been really helpful to me is I look at my performing as an act of service. I'm here to be of service to the audience. And that just like for that, I want to be incredibly well rested. I want to be very well prepared. I want to be well hydrated. I want to be fed. I want to be like, I want to have all that stuff because when I'm giving a performance, it's just so much better for me than let me show you how great I am. Right. I mean, I would love to show you how great I am, but like, like it's way funner to, be coming at it from kind of some spiritual grounding that I'm being in an act of service. I'll also just say like, for me, like mental health, like depression turned out to be like a real thing for me. Don't ask me why. I was more willing to be accepting of the fact that I was an addict than that depression was like real for me. And so like, I have to watch, exercise, mental health, sleep, medication if I need it, therapy, like all that stuff. And that's what lets me go out and kick ass on a show. And when I can go out and like, I want to be here and be of maximum service and I want to be really effing great while I do it, then it's so damn fun that even if I'm exhausted, it's all right. It's all right. I get, it's all right. And I do have friends, I'll call them if a big show, I'll say, will you still love me if I suck tonight? And they're like, yes, I will. I'm like, cool. Okay. So yeah, because it's real vulnerable out there, man. And just adding all the traveling and everything. But yeah, I just try to be of maximum service and take care of myself.
I love that. Peter, what do you do to take care of your mental health on a daily basis? I don't know if we have them.
I lost it. Everything about my day. Everything about. Are we good? We back? We back in?
Yeah.
Okay, we're good. Everything about my day, honestly, Terra, is literally about mental health. And as I say, 2.5 years ago, my girlfriend, thankfully, is very cool. Good. My girlfriend's super cool, and she said, let's get out of here. We happened to be in the UK at the time after leaving LA. And I was supposed to go away for a few months, well, maybe 6 months maximum. And it's like 2.5 years now, and we just kept going. And thankfully for all that time, I kept writing and just constant writing, which is great. So I'm sitting on a pile of stuff, and that's really exciting. But because I literally would do everything, it sounds crazy, but I'm very lucky in that position where I can just devote all my time to mental health. We get up in the morning, I do like a morning writing just to get whatever out, 2 or 3 pages of often nonsense, sometimes stuff, and then I go through some other daily preparation. Always go to the gym, and then on the way back, I normally go to like a local market wherever we are and buy fresh ingredients to then cook something fresh, which is really important to my life, to the point where I think I'm scared of going back into the real world and actually doing anything again. And even opportunities that I've been offered, I tend to just put them off. I will definitely do something this summer and go back to LA to do that. But at the minute, it's been so nice for the longest time where I literally zero anxiety. But because I keep my life really, really simple in that respect, to the point where I genuinely. I realize my life is so good and so comfortable and happy, sober, and freeing that maybe we're dipping into another problem. I might have a problem of actually going into life again, seriously, because my girlfriend is Japanese and she's an amazing woman. She's been with me 10 years, and she's incredibly inspiring to the point where she's like, the things that you often want in life, which we all know this, the things you want, you don't really want or certainly need. They're mostly ego-filled sort of things, especially in music. And for me, again, and what I'm learning from you, Kathy, is that definitely, I absolutely appreciate when you do something or perform something or give something. That really is a gift. The issue is, I think, for me and my alcoholic mind, I'm untreated ADD, in the sense untreated as I don't use medication for it, right? But I'm ADD, and I feel I've been performing sometimes, and I'm literally thinking to myself, everyone must be so bored right now. I'm sure they're just like, oh, this guy needs to end now. It needs to be over. Of course, that's not what they're thinking, but that's what I'm thinking in my head, But I'm very lucky that I've got the time and energy to devote to my mental health, which again, thankfully, is top notch. Unlike my internet connection.
That's okay. It happens. Ari, as we're wrapping up, I just want to ask, what advice do you have for those who either know they want to make a change, or for folks who have loved ones who need help?
So to start off with, change is scary, and acknowledge that change is scary and it's difficult. But once you start getting into it and you start actually working on yourself, it becomes a lot more comfortable. I would argue that change is never comfortable completely. It's always going to have some sort of fear base to it, just because the idea of changing something inherently about us can be very scary in general, and just vulnerable. The idea that say that you've done something or that something about you and your personality is wrong is a hard kind of idea to wrap your head around sometimes. But if you think that you have a problem, the number one thing is, if you're not interested in reaching out for help just yet, try taking a period of time off. If you can't take 30 days off or a week off of whatever it is that you're doing, then you probably need to look to see if maybe this actually is a bigger problem than you think it is. And from there, start with something simple. It doesn't necessarily have to be detox or inpatient treatment, like start with an AA group. You can find AA or Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous groups or 12-step groups online. Go to aa.org, type in your zip code, and it's going to tell you all of them that are there. There's tons that are virtual now. They all have different themes. It is not a one-size-fits-all, so try a bunch of them, because the first one you try is probably not going to be very good. You just got to find the one that fits right for you and is based around your belief system, whether it's religious-based or it's about earth-based or nature-based, whatever it might be. Like that exists for you. So know that whatever you need to get what you need exists out there. It's just a matter of finding it, and don't be scared to ask for help, because there's a lot of people out there, especially in the 12-step world or in the substance use world, where people who've been doing this for a long time have these really great resources and are excited to share. So finding a sponsor. If you are a family member of somebody who is also struggling, there are also 12-step groups called Al-Anon, which are for people who are family members or are the children of people who've struggled with any kind of addiction. That is a really great place to start, because again, that's where you're going to meet people who've gone through similar situations that you are, going to understand your situation and also offer some really great resources. So the biggest thing is just know that you're not alone in any of this. People have done this for years before, and it's a matter of figuring out what your path looks like. And that's just the journey of what recovery even is, knowing that everyone's is different and it's going to go up and down for sure, but you just need somebody to help get you started.
Thank you so much, Ari, for that. And Kathy and Peter, I'd like to know, what advice would you give to others who are early on in their recovery process or are just trying to take that leap?
I'll do a quick one. Definitely, I think everything Ari said is amazingly valuable, and I should have said in my daily recovery, 100% Zoom meetings are literally phenomenal. They are keeping millions of people sober, and it's so cool. And you can find so many. There's actually a 24-hour marathon meeting you can find. It's constantly on. It never ends. It goes forever. Now, again, just like Ari said, it will be variable depending on what time of the day you sign in there and who's sharing. But this is the nature of the beast, And again, it's we look to the similarities, not the differences. And I would say, but hopefully, the most important thing is look for the similarities in the thing, because there's so many differences. I can say my hair is different to you, so I'm different, or somebody drinks or uses more than me, so therefore, they're worse and I'm better. We know that this is nonsense, really, So a regular group that you can find, get yourself a sponsor, someone that you can really share with honestly and openly about your daily struggles. And that can be, amazing, as opposed to, for instance, the Irish way. If I share my troubles with someone, first thing they're going to say is, let's go for a beer, let's go for a pint, let's have a chat. And that will work, it will work at a certain time in your life, and for me, when I was younger, that worked. Eventually, it doesn't work for me. And the sponsor, and then, again, these 12-step programs, as odd as they seem, they're definitely structured to really help the a spiritual malady, which is ultimately the problem. For example, I identify as an atheist, but I can still appreciate there's more powerful things than me in the world, and I can hand that over and acknowledge. Step one is that I'm powerless over alcohol today, and that's it. And if you identify as being powerless over alcohol, then that's a good first step. And again, I'm so sorry about my internet, and thank you so much for inviting me to this. It's been great.
Thank you, Peter. We're so grateful to have your perspective and for you to share your story. Kathy, any advice or what do you wish someone would have told you early on?
That music is great for your recovery. That, like, when I got clean, people told me that if you want to stay clean, you probably need to stop playing music. And I was like, if I'm not playing music, I don't care if I'm clean. And just factually speaking, music's great for your recovery. And recovery is great for your music. Music's great for your recovery. I also just had to figure out what I could and couldn't handle. Like that big rock drum set that I was playing when I was getting high, I didn't play that for a year. I could play guitar, but the energy that would fly through me when I play the big rock drum set, it was too much for me in early recovery. It would blow the fuse. And like everyone else was saying, like, join the bands, man. Join the bands. Like, we got all the different genres here, like from salsa to punk to heavy metal to hip hop to whatever it is, whatever form of recovery you're going to find, like, join the bands, because recovery is not a solo instrument. And it's like, it's made my music better. It's made my music better, and it's made my music purposeful. And that's been great. And I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you guys. And Peter, Paula, great to meet you too, man.
Thank you so, so much. I love that. Join the band. Thank you all, Kathy, Ari, Peter. Thank you so much for your time and expertise in this. Hey, Ariel. Oh, I think you might be muted.
There you go. Am I on now?
Yep.
Yeah, that was another great conversation. That inner world versus the outer world, how we see ourselves inside and, what's happening on the outside. Kathy talked about being of service and music as a gift, and how we need to care for ourselves in order to really be able to deliver that gift. And I loved that moment. There were so many gems that she said. And Peter Paul, I'm so grateful that he, even despite the difficult connection coming from North Africa and, the video and the audio, eventually he got on, and I was really glad, to hear a bit more of his story. I've known him for a long time. My sweetheart played in his band for a while, and he's super talented. And, it was interesting to hear that moment where he talked about, being on stage and performing and thinking that the audience is bored with what you're doing. And, I remember myself, in a performance one time, just feeling like the zombies were out to get me, looking out into the theater. It was all in black, and I just felt like the zombies were out to get me. And I was talking to a friend afterwards and telling him about this experience. And he said, as long as your mind is tripping out and imagining things, why don't you just imagine that all of the people sitting there in the seats are just beating hearts. They're just tender, and they're listening for that lyric or that line in the song that they've just been waiting to hear,
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. So this was a really special conversation. It's not, the addiction part is not my own story, but it's interesting when we have all these conversations once a month, hearing the different stories that people share and how they apply, in so many ways,
Right.
Regardless of our specific journeys.
Absolutely. I mean, likewise, addiction is not a part of my story, but the ways in which, Kathy and Peter were talking about coping mechanisms, and also like Peter's anxiety over, his internal talk over folks in the audience. I've had so many moments on stage like that where I've really had to kind of talk myself through a performance just to get through it. And while I don't have experience with addiction, I can understand how difficult this industry can be, and how situations can lead you to addiction. So I really appreciated all of their perspectives, and really loved Kathy's join the band statement, because I think we can all join the band in some way in life. So I'm taking
Yeah. And I especially appreciated that, because she said that she plays a lot of solo shows. She's, as an, stepping away from the metaphor for a second, just in the actual performance of the music. And I can really relate to that, because I'm on tour right now. I play solo shows. I'm out here by myself, and and yet, despite that idea that you can still join the band, the bigger metaphor there, and also that recognition that, you play a great show one night, you want to talk with someone about it. You play a terrible show, you want to talk with someone. It's a funny thing being on the road, because you're around so many people, and also you are very deeply alone for a lot of it. So, yeah. Well,
right. And I feel like people who don't tour don't necessarily understand that even if you're around a lot of people on the road, you can be very, very much alone. And so being able to have some type of community or connection to community is so powerful and so important.
Yeah. Terra, once again, thank you again for facilitating a great conversation. These moments are so rewarding. And I think the next time you and I see each other, we're going to be past the Thanksgiving holiday and into the next December holiday period.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to the next conversation that we have.
Thank you so much for having me. These make my whole.
Hey, good luck with your recording this week.
Thank you so much.
Take care. And thank you all for hanging in here and watching. And as just, I hope that you join in on the chat. This particular episode was pre-recorded due to some scheduling conflicts. And so this taping is going to be live in a couple days, and I'm going to be in the chat watching that and participating. So as we get into the holiday season, please take good care and stay in touch with the SONA Foundation. Of course, we are a nonprofit 501c3 organization, and we know that Giving Tuesday is coming up. We have a lot of programs that are fully able to happen because of sponsorship and support of this organization. So hope you'll keep us on your mind as Giving Tuesday comes up, and also we are keeping you on our minds as the holiday season unfolds. Until next time, take good care.